शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये विनायकं गुरुं भानुं ब्रह्मा विष्णु महेश्वरं सरस्वती प्रणम्यातो सर्वकार्याय सिद्धये गौरी गणेश विनायका गौरी गणेश विनायका गौरी गणेश विनायका गौरी गणेश विनायका शुक्लांबरधर नाथ गजानन शुक्लांबरधर नाथ गजानन श्री गणनाथ विनायका श्री गणनाथ विनायका गजवदना जय गणपति वंदना गजवदना जय गणपति वंदना मंगलमूर्ति गजानना मंगलमूर्ति गजानना मंगलमूर्ति गजानना मंगलमूर्ति गजानना गौरी गणेश विनायका गौरी गणेश विनायका शुक्लांबरधर नाथ गजानन श्री गणनाथ विनायका गजवदना जय गणपति वंदना मंगलमूर्ति गजानना मंगलमूर्ति गजानना
Nandala, 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 Yadu Nandala. Nandala, 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 Yadu Nandala. Nandala, Navita Chora. Radha pyare Nandala, Radha pyare Nandala, Vai mera manas chora, Vai mera manas chora, Bhakti Bihari Nandala, Kunda Bhakti Bihari Nandala, 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 Yadu Nandala, Nandala, Chora, Radha pyare Nandala, Mai mera manas chora, Bhakti Bihari Nandala, Hridaya Bihari Nandala, 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 Yadu Nandala. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Good evening and Sairam to you all. Before we actually get on with these special satsangs, I just want to request you all to observe a minute of silence. This is in respect for the victims of the recent earthquake in Ecuador and Japan. We have also distributed some cards, so kindly write some wishes, and we'll make sure that these will be passed on to the Sai organization in these countries. So we'll just observe a minute of silence and then go into the actual program. Okay? Sairam. Thank you. Sairam to you all and very good evening. I welcome you all to this special evening and thank you for turning up in a good number. We all know why we are here. We have got a very special guest amongst us. He has traveled all the way from USA to this cold country and he had a very busy day yesterday. And in spite of that, again, he made all effort to travel to the north of England. And let us all welcome Ted Henry. Thank you so much for traveling this far to see us all. It is indeed our great fortune, and we should be grateful to Swami that we could actually see you and have your satsang in our region here. As you can see, he's still in the jacket. So, coming to north of England, the temperature drops by a couple of degrees. But as you were saying yesterday, like when you are amongst the Sai devotees, we'll try to give you the atmosphere of Prashanti, including the Indian summer. So it will get hot as the day goes. Interesting. I had the good fortune actually to listen to him even yesterday. It was a fantastic experience, and it's just listening to him, the time just flew. And it's again, my pleasure and fortune to listen to you again today. So, after coming back from the program yesterday, I did a little bit of research, within the few minutes I had. So I saw one of the last broadcasts. By the way, Brother Ted Henry is from a media background. He's been a news broadcaster for almost, 40 years. His career was spanning around 40 years. And he had extensive, experiences not only in the media and broadcast, but on Swami's guidance, and along with his wife Jodi, they both spent a lot of time actually interviewing, devotees across different fields all over the world. And you must have all probably seen via emails and all the communication, the Soul Journeys. So he is the boss for Soul Journeys. So it's a fantastic website, and there are lots of interviews on it. And again, like yesterday, I was listening to you. It's a wonderful way to actually transform. It was saying that Swami has given an opportunity for him to transform. But by watching those videos, I think there is transformation in millions across the world. So thank you very much for doing those. Yeah, coming back to my original, research about looking into your last media, news report. At the conclusion, you almost sounded like as though you're talking like Swami, because the one statement which you emphasized is, "I will not forget you." You repeated twice or thrice, and with a lot of conviction. So it's as though Swami is giving us a message that Swami will never forget us. He'll send various messengers, and there is lots of different ways that Swami's message reaches us. And another thing is, just going through I was also trying to probe. You were mentioning about your ring. I was trying to see how you were wearing your ring in that particular, but I could not get so close to that. So yeah, so just going through the program this evening. Brother Ted Henry will speak until 8:30, and from 8:30 onwards, we have got a question and answer session, which will be run by me and Sai. So if anybody has got any questions, please, there is a small, box there on the table. Kindly put your questions there, and we'll, within the time available, we'll try to make sure that we can go through those. Okay, without much further, talk, I'll ask Ted to take over. Thank you very much, and give me a loud applause, please.
Have that chair down here, and I'll sit here, people closer. Yeah. All right, thank you. So it's right down here. So I can be close to you. What's your name? How's this? Is this okay? Oh, I'll just, you want me to use this microphone or? I'm going to sit down, so I just. If I sit down, can everybody see me? It's a small enough crowd, I think. Does back. Everybody, okay.
There in front,
I
please
see
come.
everybody's faces. I think I see everybody's faces. And I see everybody's faces here too. And I definitely see her face. And if I say the wrong thing, I'll count on her smile to make me feel better. Okay, now we just need some juice in there. We'll be okay. There we go. I'll tell you what. Is it okay if I hold it? I'm more comfortable holding the microphone. All right, now can everybody hear me all right?
Yeah.
Who's got the master control knob and it sounds fine? Let me just begin the way I've been trained to begin, which is a beautiful way to pay homage to our beloved Baba. And my humblest pranams to the divine lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. I'm extraordinarily grateful that he has made this trip possible for me. In every conceivable way, it's exceeded my expectations. It's exceeded them by a wide degree. I just meet such wonderful people on journeys like this. Overall, I've made quite a few visits to various cities, mostly in America, in India, because I've gone there 19 times. People will invite me to sometimes talk. But I just want to say thank you. I'm not quite sure I'll be able to live up to other people's expectations of me, because unlike many of your august guests who have been here over the years, I'm not an expert on Sai Baba. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a professor. I'm none of those things. I'm a curious human being. And that's why I became a journalist, a reporter. So all I can do is share people's stories. And since I don't know anybody's stories yet, I know your dad. I wish he'd drive a little faster because it took us forever to get here. He stopped for all the lights that he didn't need to. So since I don't know anybody's stories here, I have to share with you my stories. And ordinarily that'd be pretty boring. But my stories are about Sai Baba and how he has really made me feel welcome in this world, unlike any teaching, any religion, any teacher I've ever had before. And he accepts me warts and all. Now that's an American expression. You probably understand what that means, flaws and all. And I've got gazillions of them. But he continuously, relentlessly blesses me. When I was raised Catholic, they explained the meaning of the word grace. I don't think that word is used too much by people from various cultures and religions and backgrounds. But grace is a very popular word in Christianity, and the best way I can describe it is it's unmerited favor. So when somebody does a favor for you and you don't deserve to have that favor done, you've been given grace. And Baba has given me unlimited grace, for which I'm very grateful. And I didn't know somebody actually watched the video yesterday of what was going on in my talk, because it makes me rethink what am I going to say now. It's going to be a little bit different. So I trust that most of you haven't seen that, so I'll repeat myself to a certain degree. And I welcome questions. I like to be as close as I can to people. And I know there's a reserve period coming up after my talk, and I encourage you to ask anything and everything. There's no such thing as an embarrassing question. There's no such thing as a troubling question. There may be questions I cannot answer because I'm not smart enough, but I'll try to answer anyway. And I hope you ask a question too, okay? So you put your thinking cap on now, okay? And just try to think of a real tough question for me, all right? You have a while, yeah. And if you'd rather ask your question before the Q&A period, just raise your hand and we can do that now. It's a curious journey that we're all on. I know that some of you are from you're Gujaratis, and maybe all of you, for all I know. I've had a chance to explore the world as a journalist. I think my company, who I worked for 44 years in the business of television news, 38 years at one television station. And on my own dime, as they say, when you take your own holiday or vacations yourself, I've been to about 80 countries, India, incidentally, is the only country I would never want to drive in. I've driven in all the other countries. I'm not that crazy. And I've learned a whole lot about different cultures, different peoples, different religions. And as a reporter, it's fed me and it's propelled me to learn more and more. So when I got the call less than 2 weeks ago that I was being invited to come here, I couldn't believe my good fortune. I turned 70 back in October and I thought my traveling days are over. My wife does not travel easily, and we knew that our days traveling together were over. And of course I wasn't going to go anywhere that she wasn't going to go. I'm smart. But she insisted that I come, and I was very glad she did. And in my city, called San Diego in Southern California, there is one flight every day that's nonstop to Heathrow Airport from San Diego, a British Airlines flight. And I got, I think, probably the last seat. And I was very, very happy to get over here. And it's been a whirlwind, and because of my age, I know one thing, it takes me longer and longer to recover from events such as this. When I would go to India, the last time I went, the 19th time was 2 years ago. We stayed 2 months, and it took me a month and a half to recover. I think that's quite a trip from the United States. You can go either way, east or west, and they're both the same. So we're kind of on the opposite side of the world. Now that I'm in California. By the way, I grew up in an area and I moved from a year and a half ago called Cleveland, Ohio, which is just like the UK, except it's cloudier. There are more clouds, and except there are more showers and more rain. And then we have one thing you don't have. We have 120 inches of snow a winter on average, which means any given winter there can be 200 inches of snow. We have blizzards. So we found paradise. Baba directed us to go find a place to live in Southern California, and it's within a stone's throw of the home of somebody we've grown to love because he wrote a world-famous book on Sai Baba, the holy man and the psychiatrist. Have any of you ever heard of it, or seen it, or read it? Dr. Sam Sandweiss and his wife Sharon, they preceded me a couple of years ago on a trip like this here to the UK. And we're so grateful that we attend satsang every Thursday night in their home, where it's been running on a continuous basis on Thursday nights in Point Loma, which is right on the Pacific Ocean, on a hill overlooking the ocean, every night, every week, every Thursday night for 42 years. So that's a commitment. And when I go to satsang there, we have about 40 minutes of bhajans and about 45 minutes of study circle every Thursday night. I feel like I can almost feel the vibrations of the souls who have passed through that sacred space. It's got to be as sacred as any temple on earth because of all the Baba devotees from around the world, including many fans of that book. My wife, by the way, was in a study group that I've been in. We're still in it, 26 years later. Long before I ever heard of Sai Baba, I was studying a book called A Course in Miracles. And actually, I can't say long before I heard of him. I'll tell you that in a minute. The Course in Miracles is a book that's very, very important to the West. It's a book that you would have zero interest in reading. It's about 1,500 pages long. You don't read it and think that you've learned it. You study it for the rest of your life. It's the book supposedly written by Jesus through a Jewish woman atheist who's the chief of the psychology department of one of America's foremost universities, Columbia, in New York City. And the purpose of that book is to bring Advaita Vedanta to the West. So non-dualism is a term that's not just practically, but absolutely unknown in America. And probably among many of your non-Gujarati friends, families, and coworkers and neighbors, it's probably unheard of here in Great Britain as well. I was absolutely drawn to it and intrigued by it, and it was a good primer for me to find Baba come into my life because of the importance of learning the oneness of life. It's so powerful that I hesitate to share it with many of my non-Eastern friends because it would almost seem like blasphemy or heresy for people to suggest that you are God. Did you know that? Did you know you are God? Yeah. Yep. She knows. So that got her started, and she studied it for many years, and finally one day, Jody, my wife, was following this book, when it became a little bit too dry for her because it was an intellectual understanding of what non-duality is all about. And as she's at a conference of fellow seekers studying A Course in Miracles, this young man in the cashier's line in the cafeteria in front of her took his wallet out and opened it to pay for his lunch, and there was this big picture of Sai Baba. And she said, who is this? Who is this man? And he explained in a sentence or two the nature of Sai Baba, and said, oh, by the way, I just finished reading this book, why don't you take it? Maybe you'll enjoy it. This is The Holy Man and the Psychiatrist. And I've heard many people tell me about that book, and some stories are quite similar, but in this case, for my wife, it took her 2 paragraphs. That's all she read. And she shut the book and slammed it down on the desk and proclaimed, he is God. This is God. So she was being primed to have that revelation come into her life. And that's all it took. Whereas I'm on the other end of the world. Baba has referred to me on more than one occasion as Doubting Thomas. And there might even be a Doubting Thomas or two here. And it's a good thing. I think it's healthy to be doubting. I no longer doubt anything, but I did for years. And I had a big change in my life on December 25th, Christmas Day, 2008, which I'll tell you about. So maybe I should start from the beginning a little bit. And that is, there's a service organization in America called the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps is a bunch of do-gooders. All of us who joined the Peace Corps after college or our college years, I joined when I was 21, I think. You're sent to a foreign country for 2 years. America at that time had the Peace Corps volunteers go to 60 countries around the world. These were emerging economies, developing nations. And I had an ulterior motive to join the Peace Corps because it was exactly at the same time Vietnam War was raging. And young men my age were just being drafted right into the Army and being sent right to Vietnam, and many of them did not come back whole if they came back at all. And I wasn't so sure I wanted to do that. So the Peace Corps, joining the Peace Corps, fulfilled your commitment to the military. It no longer did after a while because Vietnam kept getting ratcheting up more and more in intensity. But 2.5 years in South America, in a tiny country called Paraguay, very, very, very poor. Second poorest country in all the Americas after Haiti, which I think everybody knows how poor, they know of the poorness of Haiti. And while I was there, it was a great experience. It opened my eyes to the world, it opened my eyes. I had a very wise Peace Corps director in Paraguay who said, well, I just want to tell you, after your 3 months of training in Mexico, you're now down here to Paraguay, there's going to be 0 expectations made of you. You don't ever have to come into the capital city to report to me. You don't have any agenda, no quotas, no reports you have to fill, no projects you have to sign up for. And we had never expected this at all. So one of us said, what do you expect of us? He says, well, I hope and pray that you stay here for 2 years, 2.5 years, and keep your eyes wide open and travel to the continent of South America. You're not going to be paid a lot of money, but it's not very expensive to travel there. And learn. Learn about these countries, learn about the politics, learn about your own country, learn about what their motivation is, and why they're the way they are, the United States government. So what he said was, lots of people expect Peace Corps volunteers to go to the country they're serving and living in and make a contribution. They called us bags, like a paper bag, because BAG means BA, Bachelor of Arts degree that most of us had when we graduated from college. And we were called BA generalists, bags, which means we had no specialties. And we were living by ourselves in these small villages, dirt poor. As poor as any village anybody's ever come from, if not poorer in India, because it's that poor of a country even to this day, Paraguay. Probably most of you have never heard of Paraguay, and that's one of the reasons. So we weren't prepared to move any mountains or change too many people's lives, but we could change our own life. And the process of changing my own life began with that director, who I now look back upon today as I'm sitting here in this moment for the first time, realizing that was Baba speaking to me. What grace did he give me by making me feel as if I didn't have to live up to somebody's super high expectations as a young man, wet behind my ears, fresh in the Peace Corps, trying to make my mark. The only mark you had to make was to keep your eyes open and to absorb what's going on throughout the world and throughout South America, and especially to absorb what's going on in America from afar. So that 20 years from now, he said, 25 years from now, maybe you will have learned enough to the position you find yourself in one day, you can make a genuine contribution to the world, to your country, to humanity. Well, I'm not so sure how well that worked out for any of us, me included, but I loved it. And I have to tell you, this is 1968. This is a long time ago. It's before you were born. What's your name? What's that? Bekwite?
No, Prakruti.
Bekruti.
Yeah.
Did I say that right? Bekruti? Okay. Bakruti. Prakruti.
Yeah, that's Mother Nature. It's Indian for Mother Nature.
Oh, Mother Nature's a lot easier for me. So I'll call you Ma, okay, Mother.
It's not Indian.
So, in 1968, maybe it's 1969, my memory isn't entirely accurate on that regard, but it is accurate about what started my journey, my sojourn, so to speak. And that was, I was leafing through a magazine, it was sold, the cover was ripped off, half the magazine was shredded and eaten away. You get hungry to read anything in English when you're in a foreign country, and there's 2 languages there. Spanish I could barely speak. I worked as hard as I could. The other language is a native language called Guarani, making Paraguay truly one of the few truly bilingual countries on the earth. And that's defined by the United States government as any country in which 95+% of the people speak both languages fluently. And the interesting thing about Paraguay was, I mean, in India, I know there's a gazillion languages. Many are overlapping in the way maybe somebody would describe them. In Paraguay, tiny Paraguay, there is Spanish and there is Guarani. And it was often said that Guarani was as different from Spanish as Japanese is from English. So there was no comparison. It was the only language in the world unwritten. There was no book, no textbook. People had to just pass it down by word of mouth. So I didn't bother studying Guarani, and I knew this much of Spanish. And so consequently, on your time off, you would read in English if you had a chance. That would be your fun. And I was leafing through a news magazine, I don't even know the name of it, and I turned, like, let's say it was page 51, and there's a 3/4 page story about Sri Sathya Sai Baba in 1968. And I took an immediate dislike of the story. I can't tell you why, except that there were a half dozen white-clad Western boys sitting, people my age, 20, 19 years old, sitting beneath Baba, and I'm thinking, they look so much holier than thou, and I was cynical and skeptical and a doubting Thomas, and I didn't care for it at all, but I never forgot it. And I never forgot the expression on his face. I never forgot what the thrust of the story was about. It's one of the few things I truly carried with me when I left that country 2.5 years later. And then fast forward from 1968, of quite a few years, up to 1992, and I'm on an airplane heading to Calcutta, India, and I'm with the photographer from TV5 that I worked at. This is a holiday, this is not a working assignment, but I had an interview lined up with Mother Teresa. So I'm trying to figure out what kind of questions I'm going to ask Mother Teresa. And before I get there, there are people from my hometown who arranged for me to stay with relatives in Calcutta who were relatives of theirs. And the particular family I lived with for several days, their task, their seva, was to provide hot, nourishing meals once a week for all the dying men and women in Mother Teresa's home, her hospice. I think that was before the word was even known outside of Great Britain. I would even call it an ashram that she had there. And all these young nuns were doing seva 24/7. Certainly Mother Teresa was bringing new meaning to the word seva all by herself. And it was quite a remarkable story because this family allowed me to stay with them and to take food on Friday and feed the men. I got to feed all the men for one day, the dying men. And when you entered there, this always puzzled me because cremation is so big in India for many reasons. As you go through the front door of her orphanage, of her hospice, the first person who greets you is the carpenter who's making coffins. I guess there are enough people to go around, all of whom aren't Hindu, many who possibly might be Christian or I'm not quite sure what, they're buried, and he's making coffins. And it fills up the lobby of the front of the building. And when you get through the workshop that makes the coffins for those who are dying every day, you get to the dispensary where the medicine is. And I walked into that room. It's a big room with lots of cabinets. And there's a young doctor from Holland, and he's about to leave, and his bags are packed. And I have a chance to chat with him for a couple of minutes, and I ask him, why are you leaving if you love to come here every year and work for unlimited periods of time, bringing comfort and relief on some level to the dying here? He knows he can't heal them, they're all dying, but he can relieve their pain, he can keep them conscious, he can help them. And he said, well, I'm not being called back to work, I work on my own and I have unlimited time off. I'm not being called back because I don't like being here, I'm not being called back because I've run out of money, I'm being called back because of this. And he opened all the shelves, the doors to all the shelves, and he says, look, the medicine's all gone. What can I do? I can hold people's hands, but I'm trained to do much more than that, so I'm going home. So I got a feel real quickly for what the work was in this place that I really came to love and revere. And the family I was with, after my 3.5 days there, they were going to drive me to the airport. Of course, we went through a monsoon and missed my flight. But that's another story. As I'm leaving their home, the woman looks at me and says, now that you've come halfway around the world to be with one of the spiritual icons of your religious tradition, Catholicism, I invite you back, my husband and I both invite you back so that you may spend some time with the religious spiritual icon of our tradition. And I said, who is that? And she said, well, you'll never know him. I won't even tell you his name. Who is that? His name is Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. I know who he is. I remembered him from 1968. So Baba had a way of intruding himself into my life long before 1968 on many levels, which I could bore you with, but I know for sure it was him. And then once I became aware of his name, his form, his face, his mission, I started to identify even greater instances when he would come to me and have a chance to lift me, as he's done this week, as he's done with every breath the world's ever taken, this illusory sphere called humanity, I call it the mind-body, Ted. Many do too. I went to see a Vedantic teacher a couple of weeks ago who says another word to describe the play that we're all taking part in. You think you're playing the harmonium, but you're not. That doesn't exist. But the music sounds good, but that doesn't exist either. And those are hard lessons for somebody like me to understand. And this Vedantic teacher was telling me that there's two types of people. There's the witness that we all are, which is our eternal self, and there's the theatrical you. And I love that term because I worked in broadcasting for so many years. I know I worked as a theatrical Ted. I knew when I was being bad, but my mother didn't catch me. I was being a theatrical person. And I know that much of my life I've been a theatrical person, playing a role. We've played a multitude of roles. Well, it just really tickled me when I realized that I had a chance to come to know Sai Baba. And my first impression was not positive. And my second impression was there working with Mother Teresa for a few brief days. And I have it brought to my attention that not only did this family love Sai Baba, but on one of his trips and his visits to Calcutta, he stayed with them in their house. And for all I know, the room I stayed in, which was the main room off the living room in their first floor, their ground floor, he spent time there. So I felt this connection. I didn't feel it growing, but I felt the connection. Now that was from 1968 to 1992. Fast forward one more time to 1997. And I'm coming through a painful divorce, 10 years being single, after a marriage that failed, which is one of the sorrows of my life. And I didn't think I was going to get married again, and I meet this wonderful human being, and I'm having dinner with her one night, and I start to feel that this is a spiritual person I'd like to know more about. And just as I was about to think maybe we could have dinner a second night, if I could be so fortunate, she said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to say yes, I'll have to turn you down on that." And like a little child, I said, "Why? Why can't you have dinner with me again?" Well, because in 2 days I'm going to India to see my guru, a man you've never heard of before. And I said, "Well, don't be so sure about that." No, nobody in Cleveland, Ohio has ever heard his name, but a small band of people who get together for study circles and budgets. I didn't even know what budgets meant. And I said, "Well, don't be so sure about that." Okay, his name's Sai Baba. And I won her over just like that. I know Sai Baba. I know who Sai Baba is. He's come to me on 2 occasions already. And boy, there was no fight left in her whatsoever. She knew that she was going to be hooked up with me so that she could teach me about Sai Baba, which is what she did. So when you mentioned the videos called Soul Journeys that we do, interviewing people on a spiritual path who are Sai Baba devotees for the most part, about 95% of them are Sai Baba devotees. That wasn't my idea, that was my wife Jody Cleary's idea. And I try to give her credit as much as possible because she's the brains in the family and she's the impetus that started that. And I'm so grateful that she did. So this is now up to 1998 or 1999, and I'm taking off to go see Sai Baba on my own. I should tell you that I was going to go the previous year. The plane was going to leave on our Thanksgiving Day, which is the last Thursday in November in America. It's a great day, it's a great concept. I don't think you have one, something like that in this country. And I don't think there's anything like that in India. And I was determined I was going to go meet Sai Baba. Jody, my wife, and her girlfriends were all going to go. There were 6 people going. And I was going to go. This is before we got married. And at satsang at the Bhajans and study circle, several nights before we were to fly to India, everybody said, "Well, I've got my visa, I got my passport, I got my ticket, I got my money, I got everything I need. What about you, Ted?" And I said, "Well, I don't have my passport yet. The Indian office still has it, and I don't have a visa. It'll come with my passport. Oh, and I don't have my ticket. I got late to the counter to get the ticket, and they said it'll be there in your mailbox the day before you go." And they said, you should be very, very concerned because you're timing it way too close. You could miss the flight. And I said something which is one of the dumbest things I ever said in my life when they said that, and they were ridiculing me at the Sai Baba study circle. I said, listen, I heard your complaints, but I'm a reporter. I know how to work the system. I'm going to see Sai Baba come hell or high water. It's exactly what I said. Is that a phrase that's ever heard of here? Do people use that, or is that an Americanism? It means come hell or high water. Whatever the impossible odds are against my doing something I want to do, it's not going to stop me. I'm going to overcome it. Well, that was a bad thing to say. It was also a stupid thing to say. And that night I went to bed knowing I better get on the phone tomorrow morning and call the embassy and the consulate and in New York City and get that visa and get that passport back and get my ticket. It didn't matter. It was too late. That night I went to bed, and at 3 o'clock in the morning I got up to go to the loo. And the next thing I knew, my eyes opened and I'm looking at these intricate little patterns made out of strands of carpet on the floor. I had fainted and fallen to the floor in the bathroom, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing down on the floor looking at the patterns of the carpet. And I looked back and I saw one of my ankles and feet out that way, and I turned it back in. I heard a crunch. And I stood up, and I could get up. I didn't know it, but I had broken my ankle in 2 places. On my left ankle, foot. And I thought, this is weird because my foot shouldn't have been at this right angle like it was, but it went back into place. Can you relocate a foot? Well, I did. And to prove to myself that I was okay, I was going to go to a jogging meet the next morning because I was supposed to be an official there. Plus I was going to jog with the people. And just to prove to myself I was okay, even though I had no idea what happened, I jogged around the inside of the house for about 2 minutes. And then I went to bed. And then I woke up about an hour and a half later, about 4:30 in the morning, freezing. I was in a state of shock. I had broken my ankle. I couldn't reach anybody. My kids were living with back and forth every other week with my ex-wife. I couldn't reach Jody. I called my ex-wife. She came over and took me to the emergency room, and I was operated on within 2 days. I have a metal plate and about 5 pins down there in my ankle, and I wasn't going to go see Sai Baba. And everybody said, you shouldn't have said what you said. Because that's what Baba does. You know, I heard a similar story about this. I'll just deviate a little bit. This morning from Aravind. What's Arvind's last name? I got it written. No. This is a 72-year-old Aravind from Gujarat who picked me up. No, he didn't pick me up. He was scheduled to come to be interviewed in the morning. And while he was there, he says, I don't know why Dr. Viru suggested I come to be interviewed. I don't know why I'm here. I could be doing something else right now, but here I am. What possible question are you going to ask me? And I said, I don't know why you're here either. I don't know why Dr. Viru singled you out. But what I always ask somebody is how you came to Sai Baba. And he said, well, I didn't believe in God. I said, you're an atheist. He said, no, I just didn't believe in God. And I said, okay, we're off to a good start. And I had a grocery store. And I decided with my grocery store, it was getting boring when I came to this country because I mastered it. I was making money and I was feeling good, and it got repetitive and I got bored with it. So I became a publisher. No, I'm a photographer. I opened a photography store in Leicester. And I said, okay, I think I'm following your story. I'm not quite sure where it's going. You're an atheist who's not an atheist, who got tired of being an entrepreneur, and you started another enterprise. Yeah, but I picked the wrong guy to be my partner. We hated each other. We hated each other before we really came to hate each other as business partners. And I remember one day people introduced me to the idea of Sai Baba, and I was completely opposed to it. And then I realized I had no God to pray to, because I wanted to do something else in my life than be in this business with this partner whom I detest. I'm going to run this story in a couple of months, I think, and I know I will. It's a great story. I'm wondering, where is this story going? Well, you haven't heard the half of it, but I can tell you the other half right now. So one day, he's looking to find a God he can pray to somehow remove his partner. To get his partner fired, to go, to leave, to buy him out, to do something else. And in his looking around the universe of his head, thinking, who could I talk to, petition to do this? Well, I'll try this Sai Baba guy. Sai Baba, if you're there and if you're God, burn my building down. It burned 2 days later. It burned to the ground. He lost everything he owned. He was almost destitute for 6 months. Nobody was injured, nobody was hurt, nobody died. He lost everything. That's how he came to Sai Baba. And it's an amazing story that goes on with different levels of interesting circumstances. And I thought to myself, well, that's just about the weirdest Sai Baba story I've ever heard. Burn my building down. Burn my business down so I can get rid of my partner. He's a great ardent Sai Baba devotee today. His life has made a miraculous change. And I was very happy he was there. And I couldn't believe he couldn't understand why Dr. Viru suggested that he come to tell his story, because he didn't think it'd be interesting. It's enormously interesting to me. Now, I forget where I was telling you my story, but anyway, I finally got familiar with the fact that I was not going to see Sai Baba that year, and I was destined to wait. But these are things you only remember from time to time. I've given talks now for several years, and I have not mentioned this little story. It was in not being able to go to see Sai Baba because I really upset him, or he let me think I upset him by breaking my leg. That the first miracle of Sai Baba came to me, and that was Jody came over to say goodbye. I'm trying to get the dates straight, it doesn't matter that much, and I'm out of surgery, back home on my living room couch, home for a week, allowing the cast to do his stuff to help heal my broken leg that's been operated on. There's a cast all the way down to there. I'm sorry, it's from there to there. And at the very top, and this is winter time, and 120 inches of snow, it's cold. There's no humidity, there's no perspiration, nobody's sweating. It's too cold for that. And at the very top of this cast is a little opening. It has a layer of gauze, thick gauze. And she brought over Baba's healing photograph with the lingam in it. He's holding his arm up like this, and she gives it to me, and before I know it, she tucks it down into there. Okay, you know, I don't believe in this, I don't know what's happening. And then the next day I got up and I came out into the living room and on crutches and sat on this couch. And I looked down and there was water coming out the top of my leg there. And I pulled that card out and it was drenched with water, but a very interesting pattern. It was like a Christmas tree, like a triangle. From that lingam down to the corner of each card. The card's only that big. It's a perfect, fine, immaculate mist. Just like somebody painstakingly dabbed, misting droplets, tiny droplets of water in a perfect pattern forming a triangle coming down right from the lingam. Day 2, it dripped water as I pulled it out this time. And day 3, which was the last day it had water on it when I pulled it out, there was some other variation on the same thing that was not the first or the second, and then it was dry from that point forward. It should have been dry every day. There is no reason in the world anything could have made that wet. Nothing. But that card was there, and that was a calling card that was for my benefit to start to let me know that Baba can be in our lives any way he wants. He can break your leg, he can put water on his card, he can burn down your business, he can take away your wife, or maybe in my wife's case, take away her husband. So it's just remarkable how people find their way towards Baba. And of course, being the reporter, being a Catholic, being an evangelist, because when you're raised Christian, you're taught to evangelize, go bring Jesus to the masses. My effort has always been to try to bring Baba to the masses, and he doesn't want that. He wants people to find him on their own. And so many times I wished I was able to tell people stories about my love affair with Baba, and it never would work out. People would not want to listen to you. They would not want to hear your story. They would not want to tell you what they think of you for being a cultist and swallowing this medicine that's unreal, and they actually would feel sorry for me. So like Sam Semmelweis, he had the same experience. He had incredible, if anybody remembers reading his book, incredible miracles happened, one after another. And he was so excited as a psychiatrist, coming back to the world of science, trying to convince others of what was going on, that they have to reshape their views on science because miracles are happening in Puttaparthi in Paraguay, in India. And he was ostracized by the entire field of science, and his family, his siblings, and his friends. He lost everything for a long period of time. And he's still battling some of those issues today, because he has another issue that he's so excited about too. But nobody listens to him with a straight face in the science field. So it's a tough world when you sign up to say yes to Baba. What time is this supposed to end?
8:30.
Oh my goodness, I haven't even started my talk. It's 8:28. No.
Carry on, we can.
Well, I think we can do it through Q&A too.
Yeah.
So just give me a couple more minutes to wrap this up, and I'm not quite sure where to go now since I haven't even started my talk. But you got me going on an area that I guess I asked Baba to help me speak, and yesterday it was just funny because I've given 3 talks now. This is my 4th talk, and I've given maybe 40 talks before, and I always bring with me little index cards, which on it are written all my notes of all my stories, of all the things I want to say. And yesterday I kiddingly, half kiddingly said, Baba, I invoke your name so that you speak through my lips and say the message you want me to say. And then I looked and winked at the crowd and held up my index cards and say, well, I'm a work in progress. I'm not quite there yet on the faith that I believe he's going to do that. So I've got these cards to back up. And I pretty much gave my talk from those cards about 50% of the time. And today I've just done what I've asked Baba to do. And he reminded me of stories I didn't remember. I'm not sure how much of an impact they have in anybody's life, but they're very, very meaningful to me. And as a journalist, I'm thrilled beyond your imagination to have the foresight given to me from my wife Jody to start rapping on people's doors and asking for interviews. It was so funny today. I got 3 variations on Sojourn's interviews. I've done 340 interviews. I uploaded them to Vimeo, which is the alternative to YouTube, and they're also now simultaneously on YouTube and Vimeo. If you remember, some of you younger people who started to upload videos to YouTube a number of years ago, there was a rigid 9-minute limit. Your videos could only be 9 minutes and 59 seconds long, just short of 10 minutes. Well, mine were an hour. And I thought, well, that's not going to do me any good. And my son, who works in the film industry in Los Angeles, called me and said, Dad, put them on Vimeo. I'd never heard of Vimeo. And they'll take 2-hour videos. So I've been doing that. I've been recording stories called Sojourn since Jody came up with the idea. For 19 years, and we've been mailing them around the country on the old cassettes, VHS cassettes, and then the DVDs. And we lost a lot of money and nobody cared when they got them because often they would be broken by the time they came to the mail service. And then we started in earnest to put them up streaming video, thinking that these won't go anywhere. Who's going to watch these? I don't have a marketing team. I don't have $2 to spend on publicizing this. I don't have any way to tell people to go look for them. It's like bees finding honeycombs, I guess. The word of mouth started to happen. And when I started the first interview, I could tell you exactly when and where I recorded it and what I thought would happen with it. Just the opposite happened. Immediately people found it on Vimeo and then on YouTube when YouTube expanded their time limit. And immediately we had 300, 400, 500 video views a day, consistent every day, and it's gone up to as high as 10,000 views a week. And Vimeo tells you how many countries it's into, I'm only saying this to illustrate a point. They're seen in 150 countries around the world, and they're seen repetitively by huge numbers all the time, by Baba devotees and non-devotees, by people who have never heard of Sai Baba, because they'll accidentally trip upon it and the story will answer a question that's been nagging them for a long time. So I have no desire to take any credit for this. I knew how to do this because I've been a reporter. And when any human being does what I do for a living for 44 years, then automatically, ipso facto, they end up interviewing. They do about 10,000 interviews in their career. I did 10,000 interviews before I came to Sai Baba to realize, because of my wife's insistence, I should start broadening my base, and instead of just interviewing criminals, politicians, who are often criminals, and sports figures and newsmakers and accident victims and presidential aspirants, never interviewed Donald Trump, but many others, that why don't you consider interviewing spiritual people, and why don't you consider Sai Baba people? So I thank her entirely for that, and it's just taking off and has a life form of its own. And today I added, this week actually, I'll be adding 3 new dimensions. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I did my first Skype interview. So as I leave here, and I don't have a chance to interview some of the people here whom you know and others know would make a good interview, please let me know, send me an email, and I'll arrange one of the young kids to arrange a Skype interview on somebody's computer, because the old people don't know how to do that. I didn't know how to do it. It's taken me forever to learn how to Skype, and I'll do some Skype interviews. In 2 days, I'm taking a train to Bristol, I think. Is Bristol far away from here?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm taking a train to Bristol by a young woman whose name is Subo, and she's been my minder for the first several days. She's a lawyer, and she kept saying no to an interview. And I know she's got a great story. We'll do it on the train. So this will be my first train interview. Today I met a 27-year-old young man who really had a burning desire for me to go out and interview Sai youth of the world to get their interest rekindled into the program, to work harder, dig deeper, serve more, grow themselves exponentially at a greater rate. So many distractions since the Mahasamadhi 5 years ago. So many people have faded away into other areas that called them and pulled them, that isn't nearly so satisfying. And I said, well, yeah, that's a good idea. I think you're right. I agree with you 100%, but I don't think I have time to wait till I get a panel of young Sai youth here. How about if I interview you? And he said, well, there's a fat chance of that happening. I'm driving you over to, we're close to, where are we anyway? I'm driving you over to Ashok's house. And there's no chance to do that. And I said, oh yes there is. I'm in the front seat, you're in the back seat, and I took my camera out, put a microphone on him, and did a 35-minute interview right then and there. Then his dad's driving the car, says, I have a story I'd like to say. So I put the microphone on him and put in a fresh little video card and changed the battery, and that's why we're late, I think. He was driving about 35 kilometers an hour on the M1. He needs to take lessons from you. But it was another good interview. So a guy behind the wheel was interviewed for Sojourns, and a guy in the back seat was interviewed, and a woman on the train this week. So I really enjoy it because I learned. And maybe I'll just end on this and hope that... Did you get a question yet? Okay, don't tell me yet. Okay. We'll start with her question. But this all culminated, the Sojourns event, into an event that happened to me on let's just say a Thursday morning after morning darshan. I'm sitting on in the mandir with everybody else. I think about 30,000 people during the holidays, what we call the holidays, at Christmas time in the West, among all the Christians there crammed into Prashati Nilayam. It's a big deal. And this man comes up to me and says, what are you doing in 3 days? And I said, well, it's Christmas. But what are you doing? Will you be here? I said, well, that's why I come. I come every year at Christmas time to be with Baba. Well, good. Because we want you to speak in front of the divine presence, in the divine presence on Christmas Day for 20, 25 minutes. There'll be 2 of you, a woman psychologist who Germany will be here. She'll speak first, then you'll speak, and then Baba will speak. And I almost fell over. And it was the hardest 3 days of my life. I had my wife and I go back and forth many times. I told her I would not speak disparagingly of her at all. I would never do that. It's for her that I'm here. It's because of everything she was and is whatever growth I've experienced is 100% given to her through Baba, because I know they work hand in hand on me, and I'm a tough one to work with. But she rejected every draft of every talk I wrote, to the point where if I could have gotten in a car and driven home from Puttaparthi to Cleveland, Ohio, I would have done that. But I couldn't do that. And I was actually having nightmares, and I was actually having sleepless nights. And then 3 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Eve, the story that I wanted to share, that was the real story for me, that's what she kept saying. Make this your real story. Don't make it a television news script. Make this your own heartfelt expression of love. Don't make this a canned, pat speech that you're going to do because somebody asked you to speak in the divine presence. Well, I didn't know how to do that. I was never called upon to do that, and I didn't want to do that. And finally, the truth of soul journeys came to me, that I was involved with soul journeys and still am for a very simple reason, which is 180 degrees away from the lesson of why I thought I was doing soul journeys. I'm recording these stories around the world now for 19 going on 20 years. So I've got 320 up on the internet, another 50 recorded ready to go, and I'm doing another 20 here. I really believe for many years I was doing this for the edification and spiritual growth of others. And what came to me that painful, painful Christmas Eve was that I was doing it for me. I was taking your story and your story and your story and your story, and I was finding the nugget in it, or many nuggets, depending on what the case was. And I was listening to them, and I was feeling the vibrations from the people talking to me and expressing their heartfelt love of Baba because of the transformations that he's created in their lives with his presence in their lives. And I was changing me with these. And oh yes, by the way, because I'm a former journalist, or I was a journalist, I know how to share them with others too. So it was just almost, and is, an aside. By the way, I interviewed some of these wonderful people, and if you want to listen to them, here's where you go. You can find them. But I did them for me, selfishly for me, very greedily for me. And I got another outstanding one, 2 of them coming up this week. Has anybody ever heard of Dana Gillespie? She's a Baba devotee who's a sensational singer. I'll be interviewing her in her flat 2 blocks off Hyde Park on Wednesday afternoon. And in the morning, I'm going to the home of Phyllis Crystal. Does anybody ever hear that word before?
Yes.
Untying cutting the ties that bind, and life about how she was brought to Baba, and many other books. And she called 2 things I want to tell you, and then I'm going to stop. About Phyllis Crystal. She said, yes, come. She lives in Guildford now. She was born in Surrey, went to America, lived there in Ojai, California, and Los Angeles, and then moved to Munich because the air was too polluted in California. And then one day at the age of 98 or 99, this had to be 5 years ago because Baba was alive. So it's maybe around her 96th birthday. She's going to be 102. She went up to make a presentation and a speech before Baba in Puttaparthi, I think at Christmas time, and he called her over and said, no, you don't give a talk today. But Baba, you called me. Yes, I called you. You called me to speak. No, but they told you to come and speak. I called you. Okay, Baba, why did you call me? I want you to move to Switzerland. So this 96-year-old woman, 96, after one of the most trying moves of her life to get from California to Munich, where she finally settled, and Jody and I went to visit her to do some of her work with her, was told by Baba, for no reason whatsoever, to move to Switzerland, where she knew nobody. And she did that. And finally her health's starting to catch up with her, and she just came back home full circle to Surrey here in England a year and a half ago. So 3 weeks, about 3.5 weeks ago now, real recently, we get a call from Phyllis. We've grown quite close to her. She's a loving mother in our life, father figure as well. And she called us for the most peculiar reason. She said, I'm excited and I'm happy. And I said, well, we've always known you to be that, Phyllis. No, that was an act. I was sometimes momentarily excited and happy, but I've been very, very, very down in the dumps. And well, then why are you calling us? I'm calling you to tell you that I have just yesterday finally emerged from the dark side of the dark night of the soul. Are you familiar with what that means? She's come out of the deepest, darkest area of life that's most depressing to anybody. A Catholic priest coined that term, the dark night of the soul. The book he wrote about that is extremely meaningful to those of us who know the true significance of it. And I said, Phyllis, you're going to be 102. You mean people have to wait till they're 101 before they come out of the dark night of the soul experience? The doubts that we have, the pain we feel, the confusion we experience, the afflictions we suffer, the losses we endure, all of these sink us many times deeper and deeper and deeper into an abyss. And at 101 and almost 102, she realized Baba had lifted her out of that. So I'm really looking forward to interviewing her. It'll be my 5th interview with her. And to also interview her about her book. She has a brand new book she's publishing on her birthday, May 11th. I say that with an asterisk. May 11th, she'll turn 102. And the asterisk is because she doesn't know her birth date. When you're 102, some things are never drilled into you, such as the day you were born on the calendar. She thinks it's around May 11th. So that's when she's celebrating her 102nd birthday. So I look forward to that. I guess I could talk for about another 4 hours, but I'm going to need some sleep since I've been up since 4 this morning. Jet lag has not treated me altogether well, except I tried to meditate and actually put myself back to sleep. I promise you I'll stop talking. Looking at the clock. My wife and I both have the same problem with meditation. There's a reason in my estimation why Baba doesn't go big for meditation. It's there. Yeah, knock yourself out, meditate. Go ahead, try it. See if you can compel yourself to go beyond your monkey mind. And then if you read down, whenever he talks about meditation, he says, you know, the truth is, the average person can't meditate for more than 11 seconds. So my wife, every day, every half hour, we meditate for 11 seconds. Take my little iPhone out. She has her iPhone. And we're working on our retirement issues because we made lots of blunders preparing for talking to a financial planner here. We made the wrong choice of financial planner many years ago and bought annuities. Don't ever buy annuities. And so we work 4 hours every morning digging ourselves out of that hole into our retirement. We have kids and lots of people we can share our money with, and with Baba, of course, too. Not that we have a lot of money, but my view is I'm like an airplane running out of gas coming into Heathrow, and my life is an airplane, and I just want to make sure it lands on all 4 wheels before it draws its last drop of fuel out of the tank. So that's all we hope for, and I keep thinking, Jody, I'm 70. You know, how long do you think I'm going to live? Then she brings out the actuarial tables and say, another 30 years. So then we got real worried. So that's how we spend our mornings with Baba and our accountants working on our financial future to last another 30 years. And we decided to take Baba's advice. And so our clocks go off with an alarm every 30 minutes. And we stop no matter what we're doing, unless we're talking to an attorney or something by the hour. And we meditate for 11 seconds. And it works. And this morning, I actually meditated for more than 11 seconds and got myself to go back to sleep after the jet lag got me up. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's pretty silly. I guess I'm a little punchy, so I apologize. So I want to see if anybody's got any questions, and I hope you do. And don't worry, if you don't, I'll fill the void. I'll talk it to the designated hour. But I want to begin with Mother here. You've got a question. Want to shout it out to me?
There is a mic.
Here, just shout into the microphone.
Here's the mic here.
What's the best thing you like about Sai Baba?
Whoa, I like his hair. What do you like?
I like his personality.
I like his personality too. You know what he would treat me as? I had the good fortune to sit in front of him maybe 6, 7, maybe 8 times if you count a little passing glance every once in a while. He treated me like a little puppy Cocker Spaniel dog. He would kick me around and pat me on the head and go like this. And one day, he saw me eyeing his knee. I was sitting right in front of him, and you know what he did? He took my hand and put it on his knee. And I thought, well, this is wonderful. I don't ever want to take my hand off his knee. And it was about 45 minutes he had with the little group I was in. And about 8 or 10 minutes later, do you know what he did? I gotta hold my microphone this way. He took his hand and went like that on top of my hand. And 10 minutes later, you know what he did? He took my other hand and put it on top of his hand. And then he took his other hand and put it on top of my hand. It went that way, and I couldn't move. I was in heaven. Well, at one time, he had me kneel before him. I was too big to get down and kneel for more than 20 seconds. And I literally could not stand up when it was over and he told me to get up. And then one more time, I'm telling you the most embarrassing things he's ever done to me. But I love him for it nonetheless. One other time, I was bugging him by asking too many questions and making too many silly requests. How old are you? And he treated me like an 8-year-old. He treated me like a 7-year-old. He said, get out a piece of paper. So, I don't have any paper. Who's got a piece of paper? Get your pen. I don't have a pen. Who's got a pen? Now, just remember what I want you to do. Okay, Baba. Yes, Baba. Print your name. Print the day you were born. Print your address. Print where you used to live before the address you're living at now. And write something about yourself. And give me the names of your mother and father. He wanted to shut me up. He wanted to give me a coloring book and a bunch of crayons and put me to work. My wife told me that when I left because as we were leaving, I said, why did Baba have me do all that stuff? He treated me like a 7-year-old. That's what he did. And then one other time, the first time I was interviewed by him, had an interview with him. I was there with a group of 18 people from Atlanta, Georgia, and they didn't like me at all. They really did not like me. You know why they didn't like me? Because I asked all the questions. I monopolized our beloved Baba to the point where about 20 minutes into a 40-minute visit, I asked him yet again another question, and he gave me this long answer. And just as I was about ready to ask another question, he said, you talk too much. Then he looks around the room with this real big smile on his face, and he comes back to me instead of going to anybody else. Next question? And I just continued for the next 20 minutes. So he treats me like a little puppy dog. So that's what I like about him. I think sometimes like a mom or dad, he could be mean to you. Your mom's never been mean to you, I'll bet you. Good answer. But I'm told that Baba could be stern with people. And he just liked to rough me up. Always with a smile on his face. So he's a very, very good father, mother. That's who we refer to him as. Does anybody have a follow-up question to that?
I think we do have a few questions.
Yeah.
In the last couple of days, we did receive certain things.
You have pre-recorded questions.
Yes, so that's okay.
And you're going to tell me what they are. What's your name?
My name's Sai. Sai.
Sai?
Yeah.
Sai, as in Sai Baba? That's a first.
She's our youth coordinator for the region.
That's wonderful. You're the first woman Sai I've ever met. And that's really good. I'm collecting all the firsts for when I go home.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for such a beautiful and inspirational talk.
Oh, I don't think it was very inspirational, but Baba put it on my lips. So I'm grateful that there was something there rather than nothing. which would have been far more embarrassing.
So the first question is heart and soul. Could you share with us what the difference between them is, and also how do we differentiate between our mind and the inner voice?
Well, that's a question I've asked to Baba and Phyllis Crystal and everybody else I've ever met. Okay, so you'll help me out because my memory's not all that good these days, but heart and soul, two things pop to mind about that. Heart and soul. First of all, it's easy to tell you the difference between heart and mind. I interviewed a man by the name of Govinda del Buffalo. He was a blue-eyed, blonde-haired resident of Vatican City, a longtime devotee of Sathya Sai Baba, and he made up that name for himself. He had an Italian name, blonde hair and blue eyes. Govinda del Buffalo is his name. He's a real character. I got to interview him one day. I'm telling you another answer. It's close. Instead of the difference between heart and soul, this is the difference between heart and mind. And I finally had a chance to interview him, and he said, okay. And the sun was going down, and I had an early generation video camera. And it was so bad I couldn't use it, so I never put it up. But it's great there in the moment. And I said, well, what else would you like to tell us, Govinda? You've shared your life with Baba over these past 17 years coming here from Vatican City. He wasn't a Catholic, but he lived in Vatican City because that's where his job was. What was his job? He was a dishwasher in a restaurant. He washed dishes so fast that he washed so many dishes and got paid for it. Not a lot of money, but saved his money, lived in a boarding house, so that he would work 6 months and live in Prashanti for 6 months on the money he saved. That's how much he loved Sai Baba for 17 years. And he said, this is the most important thing I've ever learned from Baba, but I must admit, I'm not very good at learning. It's taken me 17 years. And I said, what is it? He said, I've been trying to get what he's saying. I've been trying to understand his main message. I've been failing at my efforts to really advance myself in my spiritual understanding. It has to do with your mind and your heart. This year, finally, after 17 years, I learned it. And he took his hand and he pointed it to his forehead. And he said, what I learned was, don't think, feel. Don't think, feel. And then he made the loudest whispering sound I've ever heard in my life. Don't think, feel. He got our attention, those of us who were there, and it was a wonderful message. And back to your original question, heart and soul. I don't think I've ever heard anybody frame a question that way before. It's an excellent question. Heart is not real. I'll just take a stab. My big lesson right now, and that of my wife, and I'm ashamed to say, we're two of the only people I know in the whole world of Sai Baba devotees who want to go right for the jugular of Sai Baba's lessons. Save is important. Repeating the name of the Lord is important. Singing bhajans is important. Being good to your children is important. Being a responsible human being is important. Learning that none of this is real is up here. Learning to understand the meaning of moksha, liberation, non-duality, realizing who you really are is the only lesson that counts. And then all of these other things that I just said are not important. Well, of course they're important. In this illusion that we're living, in this dream that we're living, as long as we're in it, they're all very important. And they all get better the more you become realized. So if that's the case, and we know it's the case, just look around you. I'm sure there are people here living it quietly and don't even share it with you. The reason why we're excited about it is because Baba put us on this merry-go-round called Soul Journeys. So if I've done 340 interviews that are up on the air already, and another 40 or 50 are sitting ready to be put up there, I gotta tell you that there's a good 2 or 3% of those, maybe 4%, are with realized human beings. And Jody and I both feel if they can become realized in this lifetime, so can you, and so can you, and so can I. No guarantee. What else would you rather work towards? What else is important? And it reminds me of the story of the pink twins. I'll get back to the second part of your question. because I'm still mulling over what's important about that. The Pink Twins. Anybody here ever hear of the Pink Twins? Dorothy and Moya O'Brien. They're the age of Sai Baba. There are two Catholic sisters who are twins. They're from Perth. No, not from Perth. Melbourne, Australia.
They got well known in Puttaparthi.
They got well known in Puttaparthi.
Yeah, they were in
They're Baba's age. You know who brought them to Sai Baba? Their mother. Obviously a good 20, 25 years older than they are. So she was an early on devotee. And their mother brought them, her two twin daughters, to Baba, and they would come every year for many months of the year. Never married, no kids of course. They did seva always dressed in pink. Pink. They had pink hair. Everything was pink. Their food was pink. And Baba loved them. One day Baba calls them in to the interview room, one of many, many days. And he has a little chat with them, and he leaves. He comes out to the veranda. 20, 30,000 people out there in front of the veranda, and he watches the gents who are sitting there. Here's the doctors, here's the professors, here's the staff members. And he says, you see them in there? You know who went in there, right? Those two women, my age, whatever his age was at the time. Those are the Pink Twins. And they know what seva is, and they know what work is. And I want to tell you, those two women do more than all of you combined. They serve with the mind. Do you know what that means? They pray for the well-being of others. Om I am Sai Ma, Om I am Sai Baba, Om I am that, radiating my healing, loving light to everyone whose eyes I cast my gaze upon. Om I am that, radiating my healing, loving light. If you can't go down to the homeless shelter, if you can't serve meals to the men and women who have no meals, if you can't work for the seva projects and programs that you have, if you can't write a check and donate money, you can serve with the mind. And Baba said they did more than all the doctors and all the professors and all the service workers combined. So that's an amazing story from the mind. The illusory heart is even bigger. And I think of the heart and the soul as one. I think of it as Atma, and I don't think you can distinguish between the two. So even though I said it's illusory, it's not, of course. It's our heart. It's like trying to describe the face of God. I once heard Al Drucker tell me how arrogant for somebody to suggest they can describe the face of God. It's beyond our grasp by 1,000,000 points, but it's what we're challenged to do, to try to envision it. So they're linked forever, and I think that the mind is big and is potent and is powerful and creative and accomplished that it is, based on what Baba said about the Pink Twins. It's nothing compared to the heart in that respect. Now, did you have a second part of that question?
That's over now.
Okay, that's over now. Did I use all the time? I hope not. I guess I did. Pretty close.
Because you're from, journalism background, this is slightly based on ethics and journalism.
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, you must have reported all over the world, and you've met lots of people. So basically, with regards to journalism, how do you, you need to be detached to the situation, and even reporting in a non-judgmental manner. So extending that to our daily life, how can we actually implement Swami's principles in such a difficult profession?
How can we refrain from becoming judgmental?
Yeah.
Not only about other people, like if you ever did anything bad in your whole life, and I know you didn't, but if I thought you did something bad, I could judge her. I'm not going to judge you because I love you, but I could judge you, because it's a human nature. We're tempted to judge. I don't know if you listened to the part where I said an example of this yesterday, but I've learned on 2 examples to never judge. 2 non-spiritual examples to never judge. Judgment is something that's as easy for us to do as falling off a log. We judge every day. about journalism, it's said that there is no such thing as an objective journalist. No such thing as an objective reporter. We all have a point of view. If it's a story about the Catholics fighting the Irish, or the Protestants, and I'm a reporter assigned to cover from the New York Times or the Indian Times or the London Times, I'm going to be biased unconsciously in favor of the Catholics. It's just the way it is. If it's a racial thing, if it's a tribal thing, if it's an ethnic or a cultural thing, we carry our biases with us, consciously or unconsciously. And you can say, well, I can't be responsible for my unconscious biases. Yes, you can. You can learn to recognize them. So I try practicing learning my biases the best I can. And two examples I have to illustrate the point about how difficult it is to refrain from judging other people. I'm a journalist. My job is to balance both sides against the middle. I'm a Libra, whatever that matters to anybody sitting in the audience right now. The scale of justice balances both sides against the middle. You probably have a lot of examples in your life where you can't make up your mind over what to order for dinner, from this column or that column at a restaurant. I can't either. I always have my wife order for me. I can't tell you what kind of car I want, because if I get into trying to measure qualitatively what's better in my judgment than something, another car, I'll just say, well, give me more information. Well, give me more selections, more choices to choose from. I can't make an informed decision. I was asked to be a member of a jury. In America, it's the law. When you're called by the state to sit on a jury, you must show up. So it was a young woman who was in trouble with the law, and they were going to read the Riot Act and put her away in jail. I forget what the infraction was. And I got the letter. I had to go to jury duty. And I showed up for the first day and the second day, and they're going through all these rounds trying to eliminate people. And of course, they want somebody, the defense wants somebody, the prosecution wants somebody like me, who they think would be biased against the young woman, because I'm old. And then it turns out the defense wanted me for some other silly reason, because I fit their mold. So both sides wanted me to be on that jury, and so far they had disqualified most of the members of the jury. And finally they come to the last day and they come to me and they said, "You're an ideal candidate. We have one last question and we just want your quick and easy answer. We know what it is. Do you feel in your heart of hearts, do you feel that knowing the facts that we're going to give you, the available facts of this case that we're going to give you, that you can render an opinion as to whether this woman's guilty or innocent?" And they were expecting a fast yes, and I of course said, "No, I can't do that." The judge looked at me like that, and the prosecutor, and then the defense witness. And it wasn't a religious matter, it wasn't a spiritual matter, it wasn't because of Sai Baba, it was because I learned as a journalist how little I can count on my own judgment. And they had to release me. I was told to go home. You're paid $15 a day to be in jury duty in America. What is that, like 10 pounds a day? You have to be taken away from your job, and you can be there for weeks at a time. You don't get a lot of reimbursement for it, and I wasn't trying to avoid it. I just could not render an opinion because I didn't want to be placed in a position of judging, even though the law was commanding me to judge. I don't know how people do it, especially in Capital One murder cases. Do you have capital punishment in this country? I don't know if you do or not. In America, it's still a very controversial item, and I wish you'd do away with it. But can you imagine deciding the fate of another person's life? What happens every day in the city I grew up in places like Chicago, where there's 500, 600 homicides a year. So it happens a lot. And so the answer is, I don't know how we do that in our business. It's not done perfectly. It's done the best of our ability. We make mistakes all the time. That's why DNA now is freeing people all around the world from their prison sentences, their life sentences, or their death sentences, because it proves that they weren't there at the time that crime was committed. So I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to answer your question either, except to not judge.
I think Sai has got another question.
Yes.
Yeah. From all your sort of sojourn interviews, you've touched the hearts of many. One in particular is my mum always talks about how much she loves them. But if you could think of one of the funniest moments that comes to your mind when you do the interviews from all your soldiering experience, what would it be?
One of the funniest ones. Boy, there's so many great, great moments. One of the most startling was how angry I made one particular man I was interviewing, and his name is Dr. G. Venkatraman. Does anybody know that name? Yes, former Vice Chancellor, and he's the founder of Radio Psi. He's a former physicist. He had several tragedies in his life. His son died at an early age. His wife died way too young. He retired from being a physicist, working for the military, and came to Sai Baba, and that's the first time I heard the term retired used. Baba retired me. And what am I going to do? I'm a physicist. Oh, that's okay, I'll start Radio Psi. And he started Radio Psi and he interviewed several hundred people, probably many more than I have. He's a very stern man, very intelligent. You won't catch him in any mistakes. He'll catch you in many mistakes. He'll cite something from some philosopher and you'll shake your head like you understand what he's talking about. Oh yeah, tell me about that. He'll nail you real quick. And he doesn't suffer fools gladly. A great phrase. I put in a request and it was granted for me to interview him for Sojourns. Wrong thing to do. He had never been on the receiving end of questions before. And I had a chance to grade him with his answers. And it was quite funny because he ended up realizing he could either shoot me or laugh with me. And he chose to laugh with me. It turned out to be very funny, and it was all recorded and all went on just like that. And he admitted, he says, I didn't expect to be grilled, not that I grill anybody, but he felt he was being grilled, and he didn't like it. So that's my answer. I don't know if you have any more.
I do have one more. So a lot of us are students, and a lot of us have exam season coming up soon. So how would you say we deal with stress and the pressure? Any advice?
Well, I can tell you one thing, and it sounds hilarious and sarcastic and crude and awful, but it's true. On exam day, you can break your arm, so you can't do the test. And I'm saying that for a reason. Because Baba will do it. There's a young man, but he's not so young anymore. Maybe he's 30, 31. Kartik Ramesh. Anybody know him? He's noteworthy because he was allowed to enter Baba's school to become a student at the age of 26. Now, you're either really stupid when you start school at the age of 26, or maybe you're trying to get into Sai Baba's graduate school because you've been elsewhere until that time, and you're about to turn 26, which is the cutoff time. Well, it's the latter that's true with him. Kartik's mom really wanted him to be a Sai student, and he missed the boat for all these years until his last year going into graduate school. And he would have qualified if he got accepted by passing the entrance exam before his 26th birthday. The exams, as it turned out, were given a month or two before his birthday, so he had that covered. But if he failed the test, he couldn't take it again because he'd be over 26. The subject matter was a no-brainer. He studied, he was a whiz kid, like all of you guys are. And women, you know. I don't know of anybody from your culture who's not a whiz kid. I know how much your parents must beat you to death to get you to study, but you have the brain power to do it is what amazes me. So he had the brain power to do it. He studied and he knew the subject matter backward and forward. He had no question, no problem whatsoever with taking the entrance exam to Baba's University for graduate school. Until 3 days before the test. And he was in an accident. Broke his arm in 3 different places. Up here, his forearm and his wrist. And his hand was mangled, his right hand. He could not write. And he looks at the calendar and he sees the deadline approaching and his mom's crying tears 24/7. You've got to take this test. You've got to. My whole life it revolves around you getting into Sai Baba's school at 26. So he shows up on exam day. Do you know what he did? He brought his mother with him to take the test. And the proctor of the examination said, "What's she doing here?" "Well, I'm going to tell her the answers and she's going to write them." "Under no circumstances is that going to be allowed here." "Who do you think we are? That we would condone such behavior?" There's all sorts of wiggle room in there for cheating. No! Either you take the test or you don't get admitted into the school. And his mother, he was ready to walk out. What am I going to do? What to do? So his mother said, you're going to sit here and you're going to take the test. You're still my son at almost 26. Take the test. Okay, Mom. He sits down in the chair, the bell rings or whatever, the examination starts. He's got this 16 pages of questions he needs to answer in minute detail. And he spends, to hear him tell the story, 10 minutes. This hand like this, pencil like this, excruciating pain, writing in chicken scratch his name. And collapsed. His arm collapsed. And he wasn't going to get one extra letter out, and did not. And the bell rang at the end of the hour or two, when your 16 pages are due to be handed in. And he picked it up and closed the book and handed it in. And he walked out with tears in his eyes, and his mother knew what happened, and she had tears in her eyes. The registrar called him the next morning and welcomed him to graduate school. But unfortunately, he only had the third highest grade in the class. He only had the third highest grade of people taking the examination. He got into graduate school without answering a single question. I said, why the third highest, Kartik? He said, Baba later told me. He got what he would have gotten had he actually written the answers himself. He thought he was smart, and he was smart. He didn't get a perfect grade, but he got the third highest grade, and he didn't write an answer. So, how's that for an answer? Go ahead and break your arm next time you have a big test coming up. And see if that works for you, because it worked for Kartik. Yeah.
One final question.
Okay.
And then before we conclude.
And then I'm going to bed.
Yeah. So, earlier you shared a couple of humorous experiences with Swami. Can you share one more, like, where you had real fun with Swami?
Well, I couldn't stand up without falling down because I was paralyzed, and I wanted to cut off my hands and save them because they were with Baba's hands intermixed like this. Did I tell you? No, I'll tell you two real quickies. And I think I did both of these yesterday. My first trip to see Sai Baba, I went by myself, and I thought, what am I going to do? I don't know a single soul here in India except for Mother Teresa, and she's gone now. No, actually, she's still alive. But I didn't know a single person, especially at Prashant Nilayam. Well, Jody, my wife, had already been there, and she said, well, there's one guy you can go see. His name is Dr. Jit Agarwal. He's a PhD from Oxford. He pioneered the quasi-science of vibrionics. I say quasi because scientists would not allow that to be considered. Anybody ever hear of vibrionics? Jit Agarwal? My wife was taught that. Many people respect it and believe it, and Baba did too, and allowed him, and he's still allowed to have an office in Prashanti inside the ashram where he teaches people to teach vibrionics and practice it with other people. They're sugar pills. They go through a system of vibration with various quotients on cards that suggest what properties this has. It might be helpful to you if you've got a sore throat, or a broken arm, or diarrhea, or polio, whatever it might be. These sugar pills will help cure you. I'm not quite sure where I am in the world of science as a journalist trying to understand that, so I don't even try. But she loved this man and his wife, Haim Agarwal. And a lot of people thought he was a medical doctor because he calls himself Dr. Agarwal. I mean, history, philosophy. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. He's a great guy, and I've really enjoyed knowing him. And so I took her up on her advice, and I went to rap on his door to ask if I could interview him for Sojourns, because I really wanted to hit the ground running in Puttaparthi my first time there. And he says, well, that's a marvelous idea. The answer, of course, is yes. Great! I'll be over tomorrow with my camera and interview you after the afternoon darshan. Well, hold on there. I said yes, from my perspective, but I got to run it by the boss. Well, who's the boss? Well, who do you think the boss is here? Sai Baba has to say yes. Sai Baba's going to listen to you, ask if I can interview you and render a judgment or an answer? Well, of course, I wouldn't think of doing this without him. So he goes to Darshan the next morning. Baba comes walking past him in the veranda, and he's Swami, and he hands Swami this note, and on the note it said, Ted, journalist from the U.S., wishes to interview me with your blessings, pranams, Jit. And Baba takes the note like this, picks it up, looks at it, looks down at Jit like this, looks at the note again, looks down at Jit one more time, and then he takes his other hand and tears the note in two, gives it back to Jit Agarwal, and says, "Who's Ted?" He had no idea who Ted Henry was, or Ted. Not that it's meaningful. I could have been Sam, and he would have said the same thing. "Who's Sam?" And, well, I thought that was rather remarkable. And I said, "So what did you do?" "Well, you're in." And I said, "What do you mean? I thought he said, who's Sam? Who's Ted?" "Well, yes, but he went like this, and that's a yes, so come on over tomorrow, and we'll do the interview." What a fool I was. I brought my camera the next afternoon, sat down, rapped on the door, and he says, "Well, I've got some bad news for you." The man next to me called me on the phone last evening, and said, "That was interesting what you did today with Baba by giving this note about wanting to be interviewed by Ted Henry. And you know, of course, that Baba said no, not to do it." "No?" He said, "No?" So he said, "I'm not entirely positive if it's a yes or a no, but I'm going to defer to what I think was the case, not what I think was the case." So it happened 10 years later that I interviewed him. Long story short, it's pretty humorous. The other one, real quickly, is Chaudhry Valetti, the head of the hospital. He was the first person to really take me towards the veranda, take me towards the interview room. This is my second visit. He was there to visit Baba because he was called for some emergency as a heart surgeon from LA to Prashanti, some decision-making matter about the super specialty hospital. He was there overnight just for he was going to visit with Sai Baba in the morning because he always had an interview with Baba and then fly back to LA. I met him and he says, "I'm always here with friends or relatives or staff members I bring from LA, and we always have an interview and they always get to see Baba. Always. I'm here with nobody. You're not connected to me by work or you're not a family member, but I like you. So I'm going to ask if Baba will allow you to come in tomorrow." Whoa! And the next day happened and he said, so in the morning it's a real dicey situation because I'm always the last person to go through the door before Baba. And that means there's only seconds, like maybe 6 or 7 seconds. And if he says yes, and he tells me that you can come up, I will dash to the front of the veranda, and you better be up close. And I was in the very, 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 very far back of the veranda, not the veranda, but the whole hall, Cyclone Hall. And when I wave my arms, you dash up there, you have 6 seconds, because Baba will close the door on you. So I wait, and I wait, and I wait, and Chaudhry doesn't come forward. And I see all these people going into the interview room. And Baba sort of notices that Chaudhry's over there on the far side of the VIP section, goes over and says, "Come in, Baba. My friend Ted from America is here. He's a journalist. Is there any way for him to come into the interview also? He's a very good man." "In whose opinion?" No, Baba, I'm sorry, I must have misspoke. I didn't mean it that way. I do know he's a very good devotee. In whose estimation? And then he does one of these things again. And Chaudhry took that as a yes. "Yes, Baba, yes." And I got in by the skin of my teeth. So have you heard the phrase, especially in politics, this is true? Somebody got into a higher office or somebody got into an esteemed position on the coattails of the politician they were working for. I felt like I got in on Chaudhry Valetti's coattails until I was told nobody gets in on Chaudhry Valetti's coattails. I'll save the last one that just came to my mind for the next time I'm here. I'll sit over here. Thank you, by the way.
To you, O Lord, I belong. To you, O Lord, I belong. Take me in your arms, hold me in your way. Take me in your arms, hold me in your way. To you, O Lord, I belong. Fill me with wisdom, fill me with strength. Make me gentle, tender and kind. Take away my faults, Sathya. Fill me with love, Sathya. Make me a true reflection of you. Baba, take me in your arms, hold me in your way. To you, O Lord, I belong. Fill me with wisdom, fill me with strength. Make me gentle, tender and kind. Take away my faults, Sathya. Fill me with love, Sathya. Make me a true reflection of you. Baba, Sathya. Baba, Sathya. Baba, Sathya. To you, O Lord, I belong.
Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Sathya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samrakshak Bhakta Jana Samrakshak Bhakti Maheshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hare Shashi Satya Shri Kara Sarva Pranapate Swami Sarva Pranapate Ashita Kalpalakita Ashita Kalpalakita Akalakadava Om Jai Jagadish Hare Mata Pita Gurudeva Mariyanta Yunive Swami Mariyanta Yunive Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nageta Shayana Om Jai Jagadish Hare Omkara Rupa Jai Shiva Sai Mahadeva Satya Sai Mahadeva Mangala Arati Mangala Om Jai Satgurudeva. Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana 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 Om Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Jai Satgurudeva. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Samasta loka sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jai Bolo Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba Ji ki Jai.
So, thank you, Ted. So, I'm just here to wrap up with a few final closing thoughts, and just to say thank you very much for making the time and coming to see us and share your thoughts and experiences and stories from way back from when you were in the Peace Corps to your most recent times and your funny times with Swami as well. It really means a lot to us, and it's kind of it's nice to have, you know, like it's just a conversation with a friend. That's what it felt like. So, on behalf of everyone in Region 5 and in Oldham, thank you very much. We have a small token of thanks for you as well, which Vijay will just present to you.
So thank you very much once again.
Camera! Baba holding a camera in his hand.
This is a collection from Ravi, this picture. So he's made this specially for you.
Oh, this is great. Thank you so much. When you say you made this, it really brings added meaning to it. Thank you.
We bought the frame. I didn't make the frame. but the picture was ours. We put it in there.
Oh, great.
It's a Swami holding the video camera.
Yeah, so it's a picture of Swami holding the video camera. So it's
Another framed photograph here in a book. Well, maybe it's not a book.
It's not a book. It's something for you to nibble. It's a nibble.
Oh, good. Not that I'm hungry. We had a great dinner. But thank you very much. You might only a microphone. The last thing I was going to say when you ask about something humorous about Baba, and I'll make this in less than 30 seconds, so I won't detain any of you. So I get the chance of a lifetime to speak in the Divine Presence, and the 22-minute talk, and Baba's right behind me, and I'm talking about my life as a Sai Baba follower, doing interviews with soldiers, as I told you already. And while I was talking about that, I'd rehearsed that talk within an inch of my life. And I'm a broadcaster. I know how to deliver a message that's already thought out. This wasn't thought out tonight, but that was thought out. And I'm cruising along, getting my comfort level up and my confidence level up, and I'm looking back, and I refer to him by name many, many times, and he's back there smiling, listening, nodding his head. And about 7 minutes into my talk in the Divine Presence on Christmas Day, in front of 30,000 people, as I turn around, I see him motion to the boys to take me away. He left! He left! And my wife just about died. This isn't the first time. Maybe he's done it 2 other times in 70 years. Who knows? I think I heard somebody say, I know where he went, but it doesn't matter. He left. And I struggle on as the professional that I am, trying to deliver this heartfelt talk when my heart's crushed. because he's leaving. And I just reflectively, about 4 minutes later, I turned around, and here he comes back in the chair with a huge smile on his face, and warmly greeted me after the talk. So that was pretty funny to all the people who saw it happen. It ain't funny to me even today.
So thank you once again, and can we give a very big applause, please? Thank you so much for coming. And so that concludes the session. So have a safe journey home, and thank you very much.
Thank you.